Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you did have time to get a tea or coffee and a comfort break. Welcome to session one of the conference. I'm Glenn Lyons, as you hopefully heard in the plenary session, McDonald Professor of Future Mobility at the University of the West of England, Bristol. I'm really pleased to be chairing this session in which we'll be discussing users' attitudes and mode choices towards transport. Each of our speakers will have around 10 minutes to give us their presentations, and then following the three presentations, we'll have time for questions and answers at the end of the session. So do please put your questions in the chat bar, and we'll be gathering those up so that we can organise that conversation at the end of the session. We're going to be starting in a moment with Warsaw in Poland, where we'll hear about insights into changes in attitudes of transport systems users towards various aspects of public transport, both before and after significant changes have been made to the transport system. We then move to modelling of shopping behaviour in Liberia on the West African coast. And finally, staying in West Africa, we turn to Freetown in Sierra Leone and consider multimodal travel behaviours of students at the University of Sierra Leone. So as I've said, please pose your questions for our speakers in the chat bar. We'll come back to them once we've heard from all three of them. So if I can turn to our first speaker, and our first speaker is Dr. Wojciech Szymalski. Wojciech will be introducing the topic of factors that change attitude to public transport during major transport systems changes. And Wojciech, please do tee up your slides while I just finish your introduction. Wojciech is from the Institute for Sustainable Development Foundation in Warsaw, and he has a background in work on climate change and expertise in regional and spatial planning, as well as public participation. So without further ado, Wojciech, over to you.
Thank you. And now I can show my screen. Wait a moment. Can you see the presentation or it's not?
Yes, that's all good.
Because I only see my presentation and I don't see any more what's in the it's on your screens. Okay, thank you for introducing me. As you see, I'm a wild male, middle-aged. So, Glenn, I was very amazed with your presentation of a white male as well. I hope I don't feel much comfortable here because of this, but let's start. Yes, the title is very long, but let's skip that and go straight to the idea of the research. In fact, the idea of the research is a try to explore why certain groups of transport users radicalize in the discussions about changes of the transport systems that we usually have not only in Warsaw, but in many cities when we try, for example, to close certain streets for cars or reduce the cars use in some part of the city and maybe enlarge the use of public transport in the other parts of the city. The research data have been taken from the Warsaw Barometer. That's what I'm going to tell you later on. What's that? And the research group divisions is the second part of the presentation. And at the end, I will show you some research results. And as a starting point for my research, I concentrated myself on a period of time that is 2018 and 2019 in Warsaw, when only one change in the transport system occurred, and this was a change in the north eastern part of Warsaw that is indicated here on the slide in the red circle. The whole picture is Warsaw. This is a public transport system map, and this part was where the changes occurred, and the changes was the start of the construction of the further second metro line. And these are 3 new stations, and important changes were that the streets that are marked here with red crosses have been closed for the car use. One of that is this Saint Vincent Street, which is a little bit low here, which is an important connection. Sorry, should go back. Which is an important connection between the districts north of Warsaw and the city center. And these streets have been given mostly to the public transport, and you see it here on this right-hand side of the slide that public transport on the street is still going to be active, and a lot of buses have been directed to the street to go for the currently last stop of the second metro line, that is Trocka, and that is here in the orange on the map. And to explore the factors and the reasons for the attitude change, I have used the Warsaw Barometer survey. That is a very long survey since 2003, conducted by Warsaw City Hall and not really explored by any researchers yet. I mean, explored in a way to dive more deeply than just the rough results of the answers to the questions. And here I show you that I only used 4 samples from the survey that were done in June 2018, November 2018, June 2018, and November 2018. And in between of those samples, we had this changes in transport system. The first change that is written here have been disclosure of the streets and given them more to the public transport. And the second change in the transport system that is described here is the opening of the Trocka metro station with some adjustments in the bus system. So you see that most of the changes were rather in favor of public transport. And to explore more the Warsaw Barometer survey and the attitudes of the Warsaw citizens in the vision of the group of different groups of transport users, I have done this division myself and proposed to analyze the Warsaw Barometer by the view of 6 groups, which were only drivers, so the people who only use the car, and so they indicated in the survey that they only use the car. And for the last 3 months of the survey, because this is how the question is arranged, that the people interviewed are asked which type of transport they were using for last 3 months. So the only drivers, then car users, because car users are the group of people that were either drivers or car passengers, and they didn't use any public transport. The car preferring group and those who prefer public transport are the ones that are mixed. In car preferring group, we've got more people that used more frequently car. In those who prefer public transport, we have more people that we have people that usually use more public transport, but they also use a car. And then we've got passengers of public transport and passengers of cars, so the people that do not drive a car, but they're usually passengers. And the public transport users are solely the group that uses public transport only. And this brings quite interesting results on many other things, not only this one that I show you. But the result that I'll show you relates only to the quality of travel. There is a question about the quality of travel in Warsaw Barometer. And this is an assessment done in a 10-grade scale, where people simply choose numbers from 1 to 10, whether they are assess bad the travel with the public transport, which is 1, or good, which is 10, and in the middle, which are all the other numbers. And then we got medium grade that I calculated, and you see that usually the drivers assess public transport less favorably than public transport users. This is probably nothing new to anyone. But you also see that in these 4 samples that I chose, the driver's opinion is less favorable with the time, and the public transport user's opinion is more favorable with the time. And this is where these changes have been taking place by favorable that were more favorable to public transport and with the extension of the metro line. But you see what's the result of in the number of the people in each groups is that people probably changed their travel behavior because of these changes in transport system. Some people decided to use a car less, use more public transport, but on the other hand, some people decided because of these changes also to use public transport less and maybe a little bit more car. So in overall, people changed their travel behavior into more flexible to adhere to these changes that were made. And that were simply making travel in Warsaw a little bit more difficult at that time. But this is very, this was quite, I was quite curious why some groups radicalize because of these changes. And you can see here that the drivers, as I previously said, are reducing the assessment of the quality of travel. And this is probably because the number of people that were active in this only drivers group was probably diminishing. So only the people that were really reluctant to change the way of travel into more flexible stayed in this group, and so they probably had and they stayed in this group probably because they had the least favorable assessment of the quality of travel with the public transport from their point of view. And
Jack,
this is how, yes.
Perhaps have 1 more minute, please.
Yes, and this is the last thing that I wanted to say.
Thank you.
That this is probably one of the mechanisms how the groups that are further on taking part in some discussions about public transport changes radicalize, and that's all of my short research. As I said, there are much more results that can be shown, but we have only a few minutes here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wojciech, and we look forward to coming back to questions on that. It would be fascinating, of course, to see how your graphs change as we look forwards through into and beyond the pandemic, but I guess that's for another project. So we now move on to our second presentation, which is from Amara Ballack, Massaquoi, And Amara is going to be talking to us about statistical modeling of mode choice for shopping trips in the Central Business District of Paynesville, Liberia. But Amara is from the Transport Research and Education Center at Kumasi at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana. He's a civil engineer, specialist in road and transportation engineering. So without further ado, Amara, over to you.
Hello, can you see my slide?
Yes, all good, Amara. Yes, all very good.
Can you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Amara, could you click on the slideshow next to the below? In presentation mode. There, exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's okay now, right?
Yes, that's good. Please continue.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Massaquoi. I'll be presenting on statistical modeling of mode choice for shopping trips in the Central Business District of Paynesville, Liberia. The content of the presentation for today will be, I'll be presenting the statement problem regarding to the topic and why the identified gap that will fill up, the methodology used for this studies, the result, key finding, recommendations, and others. As we are aware, we know that the modeling of travel behavior generally in the world is a good tool used all around the world to enhance effective transportation systems and help to improve commuters' mobility. Furthermore, it helps to predict the number of trips that are directed to certain location and help to reduce congestion. Due to this reason, most of our transport researchers and others past researchers, they have presented so many literature when it comes to mode choice modeling and their significance. But however, most of these studies are focused mainly on was centered around work trips and that of educational trips. Okay. During the course of this research, we are able to identify two major problems that the research filled this gap in terms of literature to contribute to the bodies of knowledge. One was we realized that there was limited literature on mode choice in developing countries, especially in the case of the Central Business District. Due to this problem, we realized that in our country right now, at the present location, there's poor transportation planning system already alarming there. So due to this poor transportation problem, we realized that there's huge level of congestion, which has disturbed the traffic flow, and they also have degrade or deteriorate the infrastructure, the rural infrastructure before time. And also, despite we have developed models, shopping models from all around the world, developed countries, not developing countries. But we realize that these models that are developed in other countries cannot be replicated in Liberia because the transport systems there is different. The way people behave, traveler commuters' behavior is also different. And also, the lifestyle of individual there is also different. So, due to this gap, the research was carried out in order to identify the factors that influence people travel behavior in terms of shopping trips in the Central Business District, and also to develop a model that predicts or explains the factors that contribute to this effect or this impact on the infrastructure. In order to achieve this objective of the study or the aim of the studies, this methodology was adopted in terms of coming up with our final conclusion in terms of our results and come up with recommendation. Our intense literature review was done. Existing literature was done. We reviewed existing literature from existing literature. We were able to identify some common factors that influence traveler behavior for shopping trips in other business districts in other countries. Coupled with the characteristics of the study area, coupled with the characteristics of the study area, we realized that we need to use a stated preference questionnaire in order to collect our data for the study. So stated preference questionnaire was used, and we carry on the survey. 2 set of data analysis occur. We did a descriptive statistics and also develop a model using regression. So after our collection and data analysis, we realized that we say, okay, we did descriptive statistics. Like you see here, the trade purpose, to understand the trade purpose, why it's still the same for previous research. We realized that in the central business district right now, 64% from the current studies, we realized 64% of the current trip survey was directed to shopping trips, while working trip came as second. So this implies that this is contrary to previous studies from World Bank and African Development in 2008. In 2008, they mentioned that the working trip in the central business district was the most prevalent one, and it was causing serious. But as it is now, the trends of the data here, shopping trips seems to be the highest one. It causes serious point for the rural infrastructure and the way people move. Also, we also try to understand the available mode within the area. Sorry, math will give me a problem there. Sorry. So we realized from our data also that we analyzed, surprisingly, motorcycle recorded the highest. And the reason this happened is because we know that the area is congested, and then the passing maneuver of vehicle is very difficult. So people tend to use motorcycle rather than using public transport. This also is also contrary to previous research by the World Bank in 2008, where public transport and private car recorded the highest number. Furthermore, we also cross-examine the trade purpose in terms of the mode choice to see how people mode choice they select and how does it affect the trade purpose and that of the age. So as you can see from the bar chart above, motorcycle in all the trade purpose came as the highest. Similarly, we did it for us, we did it for age. And then we also realized that in terms of motorcycle usage, it was more popular among young age group. But when we got to people of higher ages, despite the income level and other things, but they were still opting for using public transport and other best mode of transport that is safer and accessible to them. Similar, and the cross distribution was also done for the income level. We realized that which is obvious, people with higher income tend to use private car and other mode of transport rather than motorcycle. And also for the travel distance, also did it for travel distance. We also realized that as the travel distance increases, people prefer to go for other mode of transport rather than motorcycle. So this implies that with good system, transport system for public transport and quality of service, more and more people will go for public transport and other mode of transport instead of motorcycle, which is not safer. Also, lastly, we were able to develop a model, a multinomial model for the studies. And the following conclusion, key findings were drawn from the model. One was we realized that the income factor like income, age, also location, education status was the significant factor. These are factors that are affecting people's travel behavior in the central business district, as compared to other studies that are done in other places where gender and other factor was prevalent in some of the models. But in the case of the central business district, it's not that way. We also realize the use of motorcycle is also on the increase. So we are hoping that stakeholders and other city corporation can see how best they can try to improve the system that will make people to shift from motorcycle who is not safe, who is of course accessible, is easy to maneuver, it's cheaper, but it's not okay for, in terms of safety, it's not okay for the commuters. We also realize the increase in income and education status will also lead to the utility of public transport, like I said from the onset. And then we also know that the age and travel cost also maximization lead to private car use. So instead of we are trying to see how best we can promote public transport. That's the essence of the study also. So we are hoping that in the future the final recommendation was made we are hoping, or we are hoping that in future, because as it is when in the Central Business District, there's no formal labs or there's no parking facilities within the Central Business District. So this study we should recommend that the institution who is responsible for this stage should be able to implement parking, off-street parking facilities to minimize the level of congestion and the number of random stops on the road. In the future, I want to say this in conclusion, in the future, if the service quality is improved and policy of public transport is improved, people will be waiting more and more to use the public transport system. But as it takes right now, as the current status right now, we are going through a lot when it comes to the public transport in our country. So
Thank
the
you,
following, sorry?
if you could please conclude as soon as you can.
Yes, this is the last slide, sorry. So the following, for the future research, I wish that another research, the following research can come up and maybe increase the sample size of the data we use, and then come up with other findings. I will see whether there will be other additional significant parameters that affect individual travel mode in the Central Business District. Also, existing parking facility can be incorporated in the next travel and shopping trip behavior investigation to understand how the parking facility, the lack of parking facility in the area affects. Thank you very much for listening.
That's great. Thank you very much, Amara. That was fascinating. And I see we've had a question come in from the audience, which we'll come back to later, and I certainly have some questions of my own. So now we turn to our third and final presentation from Simeon Stevenson Turay. Simeon's going to be talking us through mode choice among public university students in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Simeon is also from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana. Simeon's a civil engineer who's just finished his master's degree in highways and transportation engineering, but who also has qualifications in project, supply chain, and environmental management. With that, Simeon, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Simeon, your connection, at least at my end, is a little bit problematic. Perhaps your camera may need to turn off.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you good now, Simeon. Thank you.
Please, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Simeon, but it seems intermittent. Perhaps if you start your presentation, we'll let you know if it's still a problem. Simeon, can you hear us?
Simeon?
Yes, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And my presentation will follow. The University of Sierra Leone, which has been in existence for years, constitutes of Frabe College, Institute of Public Administration and Management, and College of Medicine and Allied Health Sciences. For the past 11 years, that's right from 2010, there have been no on-campus student accommodation at all. So as a result of this, almost all university students are day students and are seen to have actively involved in using public modes of transportation. But in the past, the most common one used by the students have not been understood. This research therefore seeks to investigate, investigates the most common transport modes among students, and also we try to understand the factors that influence their modal decision. We also try to develop discrete outcome models of their travel decision. To achieve, we selected 3 public colleges in Freetown. These colleges are located in central and the far east end of the city. Freetown is the largest in marginal and it has the highest percentage of public universities, both private and public. And it has an approximate land area of 82 square kilometers. According to the recent census in 2015, the population of the city stands at 1.5 million people. We actually adopted the following research methodology. We first of all try to identify the research need. We design a survey sample using Cochrane's formula from in the form of pilot. It was assessed, dated, and the domain which we conducted. We analyzed it, we validate the model that we developed, and then we interpret and draw some meaningful conclusions. Choice to the students. And then we adopted simple sampling. Hello?
Yes, we can just about hear you, Simeon. You may want to turn off your webcam while you're presenting, just to improve some bandwidth.
Okay. Please, it's off, right?
That's good, we can hear you.
Okay. During the survey implementation, we presented 8 mode choice sets to the students. So we have the paratransit mode, poda, motorbike, taxi, keke, and non-motorized transports. And then the survey was conducted using simple random sampling in which each student from the 3 campuses has equal probability of being selected to participate. We use methods, smartphone self-intervention system survey method. Overall, we received 29% responses online and then 71% paper-based. The survey was conducted during the final semester exams of the students, so it lasted for about 3 weeks. Here are some of the statistical results we have. The sociodemographic features show that we have 54% male and 46% female. And then also the university population is relatively young in age, ranging from 18 to 35 years. We also realized that 68% of the students that provided us with their responses were pursuing their bachelor's degree at the university. In terms of modal share, it was revealed that the paratransit mode, poda, was highly used by the students, as we can see 46% of the responses. Also, majority of the students stayed at above 5 kilometers radius from campus. And then among the students that stayed in less than 1 kilometer from campus are students coming from the College of Medicine and Allied Health Sciences. For students we are seen to stay at a distance of about more than 5 kilometers from campus. Also, in terms of the travel time, more than 40 minutes, majority of the students, spend more than 40 minutes traveling to campus, since they stayed outside campus and then they stayed more than 5 kilometers from campus. We also realized that among the students that stayed in less than 1 kilometer from campus, most of them use only 20 minutes, about that, to campus, since they are fully engaged in non-motorized means of travel. We use 20% of the data to carry out 80% rather to carry out a model estimation, and we are able to develop 5 utility functions with this model, one each for poda, motorbike, taxi, keke, and non-motorized. The outcome of our analysis, here are some key research findings. We realized that poda has share, and it was highly used by the students, followed by motorbike, taxi, keke, and non-motorized transport, using cycling or walking. We also realized that characteristics of the built environment, trip characteristics, and social demographic when they were making their modal choices. By modal share per campus, we realized that students coming from Fravi College are more into the taxi, bus, and motorbike, while students coming from Commerce and IPAM are engaged in the use of non-motorized transport. On average, students from Fravi College are coming from high income level families, at least 5 million leones, which is about 500 United States dollars. Another key research students are more likely to use public transportation to get to school. Also, eligible students who may probably be pursuing their postgraduate courses are more inclined to the use of the new mode of transportation in the country, which is keke. So they were seen to walk less and utilize more of public transportation. In terms of travel time, our research revealed that students pay more attention to travel time than cost. But interestingly, this level of premium paid on travel time was kind of like different when you consider the paratransit mode, poda, and keke. Here, the students prioritize travel distance and travel cost respectively. Another finding that we had from the attitudinal questions and modal preference we presented to the students, we realized that the students from the University of Sierra Leone are kind of heterogeneous when it comes to assessing the influence of mode choice on the environment and then their travel behavior. With all our research findings, we prepare some recommendations for policy implication to our stakeholders and then university authorities, the governments as well. One of the key contributions of this research is our ability to carefully identify and quantify the factors that influence the mode choice of students traveling to the different campuses. Also, with our findings, we present university authorities and transportation officials with the need sustainable enough through the procurement of suitable travel modes for each of the 3 campuses. Another recommendation is to establish cycling and pedestrian pathways. This we think will kind of, more especially when we realize that students coming from the College of Medicine and Allied Health Sciences are more inclined to walking and cycling. We also recommended that university authorities and transportation officials and kind of build more students' flats. This we think will create a society that will connect students and reach distances to college. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Simeon. And we're very pleased that you managed to cope with a slightly difficult internet connection. I think we got almost 95% of the presentation, which was certainly enough for us to follow it. So thank you for that. So we have a good amount of time now for some questions. Encouragement again to our audience. Thank you for the questions we've already had. Do please continue to put some in the chat bar for our presenters. And can I perhaps invite all 3 presenters to turn on your cameras now, and then we can turn to some questions. and perhaps if we can stop sharing the screen for the moment, we can have a good view of us all. What I'd like to do, perhaps just to give you this question initially, all three of you, but when you're responding to other questions, you may like to comment on this. Of course, the joint approach to this event means that we are very mindful of gender and diversity across the whole event. And I just wondered how conscious the three of you were of gender during the course of your research. I don't know if anyone would like to immediately answer that, or if you'd like some time to think while we come to some other questions. Anyone who'd like to react straight away? Yes, please, over to you, Wojciech. Oh, yeah, we can't hear you at the moment. Wojciech, did you want to come in? Okay, so we have an audio problem, I think.
Probably.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
The organizer needed to unmute me.
Excuse me, Amara, could you also turn your camera on, please, so that we have all of you on the screen? Thank you, Wojciech.
Thank you. Yeah, Amara, that would be great to see you, and over you to Wojciech. Thank you.
Just shortly, frankly speaking, I haven't been exploring yet the gender in this Warsaw Barometer studies. However, I got some data, but I only tried the data about the age of the people. That is also some sort of irregularity there. The older people usually use different type of transport than the younger ones and things like that. But I haven't been exploring yet the gender here. However, there is a potential to do it.
Thank you. Simeon, I don't know whether for you also, you of course gave us some results concerning gender, but perhaps not so much cross-sectional analysis. Do you imagine there might be more to learn from your data, from your survey regarding gender differences?
Yes, Glenn. Sorry, is that
question
question for me, please?
To me.
Yes, for Simeon, please.
Yes, actually, we try to understand, first of all, the population, the students' population from the University of Sierra Leone, which has like three we know, and then it's very obvious is that we don't have much fish in
Hello?
Okay,
students, and that's why even
Hello?
hello?
Sorry, Simeon, we've lost connection a little bit with you there.
Hello?
Oh, hello, is that Amara?
Yes, Amara.
Hi, Amara. We can't see you on camera, but perhaps you're okay with audio. Is there anything you would like to say in terms of how conscious you were in your work of gender differences?
Yeah, there's huge gender disparity when it comes to the transport sector in our country. Yeah, so I think there's a need that these studies be carried out in our country to help at least balance the gender equality. But as it is now in our country, especially for public transport, there's huge gender disparity.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, I was interested with your focus on the high proportion of shopping trips. First of all,
Okay.
I think the notion of what shopping really means, I'm very aware that if much of it is by motorcycle, it probably reminds us that many of us in the global north don't have a good understanding of the shopping context and the meaning of shopping. Perhaps you could say a little bit more on that.
Oh yeah, the shopping context in my area is it's almost like a general case where people go and get some grocery and other things for weekends, for normal days, from supermarket and other places. That's what they usually do. So, but during that course of the time, there are other people who do businesses who go for shopping for other purposes. So, but due to the congestion level, so in our country, motorcycle is the most prevalent in our country. It's actually surprising, but It's a legal system. It's a legal form of transport system in our country.
And just from your data, could you give us some insight about how commonly motorcycles are ridden by women for shopping as opposed to men?
Oh yeah. The male most of the time use motorcycle. Female always feel that the motorcycle is not safe in that instance for the data. The data are collected. So as it is, the male is more than the female that use the motorcycle in terms of proportion.
Okay.
Most females use public transport rather than motorcycle.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Can I just, there's a particular question from the audience for you as well, Amara, which hopefully you will have your slides in front of you to address, but the person asks, what is the real percentage of private car trips to the CBD? Is it 35.7 or less, as the picture suggests? So is that the proportion of car trips is just around a third, or is it higher than that? I'm assuming at the moment there's thinking time, Amara, but let me know if you need the question again. Okay, perhaps we have lost Amara, in which case we did have another specific question for you, Simeon. Could you tell us a little bit more about what a podder is, for those of us less familiar with Sierra Leone's transport system?
Hello, Glenn. Please, I lost you before now.
Oh, sorry. Could you tell us a little bit more about what a podder is? Someone asks in the audience.
What podder?
Yes, please.
Yeah, podder is one of the public or commercial transport vehicles we have in Sierra Leone, and it's a kind of like a paratransit mode that takes up to about 8 passengers for both intercity travel in Sierra Leone, and it's the most commonly used mode of transportation in our country. So it wasn't surprising at all when revealed that it has the highest percentage of road users.
Okay, and could you just say a little bit about how it works compared to other types of bus? Mustafa Ayman asks.
Okay, the podder is kind of like when you see it at first sight, is anything like a minibus. Well, it isn't. Is medium in size, a bit smaller. So it's commonly used by students, public transport users, and majority of the Sierra Leonean population. Like in Ghana, this mode of transportation is being referred to as structural. So and then they are of the same vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that's been useful for our audience, having a bit more of a sense of the landscape of mobility in Sierra Leone. So if I could come across to you, Wojciech, I was particularly interested because, of course, you had a dynamic dimension to your research with the before and after study. To what extent do you think those changes have stabilized, or would you anticipate there being a continued change in attitude and behavior towards public transport?
Thanks for that question. My research stopped at the end of 2019, so there was a COVID afterwards. So in 2020, there was only one survey, and it really wasn't the successful one. I mean, neither trend continued because everything changed in Poland in public transport. But this, what have been at the end of 2019, was an end of a big trend from the past of the rising higher quality assessment of the public transport in Warsaw.
And if I understood correctly, your data seem to suggest that after introducing the improved public transport services, the perception from car drivers about public transport went down. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. But what I here explain is it is because the number of drivers that were asked for that diminished, and probably because of the construction of the survey is that simply the number of drivers as a percentage of the people in Warsaw probably also diminished. So that's why this group and the people who left driving a car only probably were sharing more critical attitude to the public transport, and the people that were not so critical probably moved more towards public transport because it became better. That's my assumption a little bit from the data that I have.
Okay, so there's not only a dynamic in behavior, but individuals have perhaps moved between your different groups in your analysis.
Yes.
Which is another challenging dynamic. Yeah, thank you for that. And do you think that is the Warsaw Barometer a consistent set of questions that's conducted annually? And will those questions continue through and beyond now the pandemic, so that perhaps you'll be able to return to this analysis again in the future?
I hope so. As I said, there was only one instead of two surveys in 2020. And I haven't yet updated myself about 2021, but I hope there were surveys as well. And probably the results of the first survey should be ready now or should be announced quite soon, if they were taken, because I observed that unfortunately this research was somehow not well seen by the government of Warsaw, by the local authorities, and was not well exploited and not well not well maintained, let's say. Okay.
And perhaps, I don't know, maybe a suggestion coming from this conference is that a gender equality audit of that Warsaw Barometer might be a useful exercise for someone to do. Without having seen it, I don't know, of course, the questions that were asked. But yeah, that was fascinating. Amara, are you still with us, or? Do we have Amara still with us? I'm not sure we do. I was interested in his views on the stated preference approach and his methodology, but perhaps we'll have to leave that. Simeon, I know it wasn't directly to do with your own analysis, but I was very taken with your mentioning that there's no student accommodation on campus. Are you familiar enough with that to tell us a little more about the situation? Because one could imagine that would be an alternative solution, of course, rather than a transport one, to students being able to safely access the campus facilities and for their education. Simeon, I'm not sure whether or not you're with us.
Hello, sorry, Glenn. I think I seem to be struggling with the internet. Could you please repeat the question?
Of course, yes. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the situation with the universities in terms of there not being accommodation for students on the campus. Is that something that's considered in terms of forward plans to help with students accessing the campus?
Basically, the challenge with the university accommodation, as I mentioned in the presentation, this one started right in 2010. Before then, there were students' accommodation, but the university authorities and government were faced with the challenge the structures were not in good order to accommodate students. So for quite 10 to 11 years, this has been a challenge. Well, I may not want to politicize it, but it's like it was in that direction. So everything was like on that standstill position. And most surprisingly, students' accommodation fee was not embedded in their tuition fee. So when you receive your acceptance letter from the university, you apply separate issues of maintaining the hostels, issues of administration, were all put together that have affected students' accommodation on campus. But with this academic year, there is a project called Badia Project, with new student hostels and even some lecturers' flats. So I think with 2022-2023 academic year, the issue of students being day students will be over. And most of our students will now be accommodated on campus, and they'll be provided with the luxury and the flexibility of enjoying on-campus life.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. Yes, thanks, Simeon. Well, I'm conscious our time is almost up. I think this session has been a really powerful illustration of a number of wicked problems, as we were hearing about in the plenary session. The challenges of understanding travel behavior in all their dimensions, not just the matters of gender. The world of digital connectivity that we're in, which, as we discover, all of us from time to time, like Simeon today, can be a challenge. But of course, also the consequences of the pandemic, both in terms of how that's affected our ability to understand behavior change with our data, but the challenges we face societally moving forwards. So I'm sure virtually our audience will be joining me at this point in wanting to thank Simeon, Wojciech and Amara for their presentations. Thank you so much. It's been very interesting and we wish you luck with your ongoing research and career developments. Thank you all.